Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Alan S. Questel. And we
Questel.
are going to be
Questel.
talking on the topic, practicing random acts of kindness. Welcome, Alan.
Actually, you made a mistake. That's crossed out. It's practice intentional acts of kindness and like yourself more.
Oh, no, I'm talking about our topic,
Oh, I'm
not
sorry.
the
My
book.
mistake. Sorry.
Yeah, we're talking about our topic today. It's never the same
Um,
as your book. I
got
took
it.
I
Sorry
take
about
the
that.
topic from our conversation. Okay.
Very good.
All right. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
You're very welcome. All right. So let me give you a brief introduction. Alan S. Questel is known for his clarity, creativity, and down-to-earth style of teaching. He brings a depth of understanding, humor, and gentle human perspective while creating lively conditions for learning. Alan has taught thousands of people in over 20 countries on 5 continents. Trained by Dr. Feldenkrais, he has created numerous programs on varied topics, including one for pregnant women called Pregnant Pauses. He's the author of Creating Creativity, Embodying the Creative Process, and Practice Random Acts of Kindness, and Like Yourself More. He is constantly discovering how to be kinder to others and towards himself. Practice intentional acts of kindness and like yourself more takes readers through steps to broaden and sharpen their understanding of kindness. It will show ways to embrace kindness in everyday life and provide the means to be kinder and generate more kindness towards yourself and others. The book will help readers through old unconscious confirming patterns of thought and feeling and free them to express all the love and kindness in their hearts. Awesome. Well, kindness is a big topic. I
Mm.
practice not necessarily random acts of kindness, but I practice to be kind to people, the
Yeah.
people in my circle, my family members. I was a foster mom at one time, and
Mm.
even when I had these really, dysfunctional kids, I will always be kind to them because I understand their problems and the things they had to deal with in life. But one of the things I want to start off with, Alan, is you
Mhm.
say that we can generate self-healing through intentional acts of kindness. So how can we do that?
Well, the way we can learn to be kind to ourselves is a way of healing ourselves, of moving through any past difficulties that we've had and generate, I would put it in almost a simpler way, which is the more I come to like myself more, the kinder I have to be with myself, right? But I'm going to tell you something interesting. When I wrote the book, when I got to the part about being kinder to ourselves, I got blocked for about 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I really had a lot to learn. I thought I was being kind to myself, but in fact, there was a lot for me to learn. And when you ask the question, I talk about this. There's another book called The Rabbit Effect, which I talk about in my book. And in that book, this is fascinating in terms of healing ourselves. So they were doing this terrible study with rabbits where they were filling them full of fat to see how their hearts went bad and stuff. And of course, they had different control groups and everything. And one control group was getting the same poisonous stuff as the other ones, but their hearts weren't getting bad from it, and they couldn't figure it out. And finally, they found out that the tech who was feeding the rabbits, she was also petting them and cuddling them. And
Mm.
these rabbits didn't get any heart condition. So that's clear evidence, physiological evidence that the act of kindness changed the biology of what was happening in these animals. So when
Wow.
we're kinder to ourselves, to others, it generates different chemical activities in our brain, and we just feel better and we can heal ourselves, I think, for sure.
Yeah, so that's great. So what's the neuroscience behind it? Do you know what happens? Is it because of dopamine or
Yeah.
one of those chemicals that
Yeah,
allows
It's
us to
all,
do
it's
that?
all That's what we know right now. My best friend, he unfortunately passed away a year ago, and he was a neuroscientist, written 40 books,
Mm,
lectured at Cambridge. And whenever we would talk about this kind of stuff, he'd always say, that's all we know right now. That's the story we tell ourselves. So we can tell it dopamine, serotonin, we can name these different chemical reactions that happen, but that's kind of abstract actually for people. We like hearing that information. It sounds important and worthwhile. But for me, the most important thing is what's the concrete things we can do to generate these kind of changes that result in the chemical changes and things like that. So that's what that we can take advantage of.
that's a good answer because we always want to know the why, but the why sometimes is not important.
But it changes. It changes all the time.
Yeah, it changes all the time. For instance, we were talking about the brain and how the brain works, and people are still trying to figure it out. But we don't know why a lot of things happens, but we
Right.
just know that the end result is great. But I mean, I always like to at least pose the question to what
Mhm.
exactly is happening in the bodies, because what
Yeah.
happens is true. When we understand why something is happening, then we'll probably try to do it more. If we
Yes.
if we just say, hey, you know what? It's random, then maybe we wouldn't get into it, as much. But yes, kindness. I mean, I go all the way back um, uh, to the nursery rhymes where I think it's Cinderella, where it's have courage and be kind is one of the main focus of that story, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, and it's true. I mean, those two fundamental things, we're talking just here about kindness, but yes, be courageous and be kind.
Yes.
Wow, that's a
Yes.
bumper sticker that everyone should have.
That's
So it's great to know that when we're kind to others, something happens in our bodies, something happens in ourselves that allow us to heal, probably emotionally and physically, right?
definitely, definitely, definitely. And I love what you said about courage.
Mhm.
And because I think it takes courage to be kind, right?
Mm,
And but I can speak about it very specifically that sometimes to act kindly is outside the parameters of our self-image, of how we view or see ourselves. And we have to take a step that's a little uncomfortable to do something like this. It's not me yet, right? And I have to act in a way that seems like it's not me until what? Until it becomes me. Like,
right.
and it's true for anyone who gets a new job, a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher. When they start out, they feel like charlatans, right? The last place you want to be is the coffee break room with new doctors. They're like, oh my God, they almost died. I can't believe it, right?
That's right.
And
Yes.
so it feels inauthentic at first, but the only way we have it become authentic is by having the courage to step out and do it, make something happen.
Yeah, and be kind. And it does feel good. It does feel good when
Yeah.
you're kind to people, especially when you're practicing kindness to someone that you don't think really deserves it. You know what I mean? But you do it anyway, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That, and it's funny because when I start the book out, uh, people think I have to make a list, and people think, oh, I'm going to learn how to be kinder. And I start out in a different place. I start out, where are you already kind? And
Mhm.
then I keep morphing it to the point where who could you never imagine being kind to,
Kind to,
right?
yeah.
I'm playing with those ideas too to see that I could never be kind to that person. But you know what? The people who I never could be kind to, if I really look at them, I see more sadness in them. That I don't like them because of who they are, but this is a representation of their dissatisfaction, how much they don't like themselves. And then it's easier to be kind to someone, even the ones that we go, nah, I'm not going to do that,
Yeah.
Yeah. We all know
Well, the
that
way
one.
you the way you said that, if you're saying that you're never going to be kind to someone, that means someone has done you something. So it almost parallels with forgiveness, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
completely. And we need
Yes.
to we need to forgive. We need to be more forgiving. And because look, when we're not forgiving someone, there's usually a sense that we've been offended, right? And that the offended can take on many different colors. It can be, I feel entitled. I feel rejected. I feel unseen. I feel angry. I feel jealous. That's all a feeling of what about me, right? As opposed to, so what about me? What's this person going through? Maybe I can go past myself a little bit and find some more forgiveness. I've been so struck sometimes when I've read stories of someone in some war zone whose family got killed, and the person talks about forgiving the people who did this. And I think,
Yeah.
wow, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
big task to do
Yeah.
something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, and forgiving ourselves too for
Wow.
who we've been, who we didn't want to be, and to say that was the best I could do with the information I had at that time. Would I
Yeah.
do it again? No, right? That's clear. But that, and the act of forgiveness to me is a deeply felt state. It's not an idea. It's like I can feel the suffering I caused someone else, or I feel the suffering I caused myself. And that can lead me to change something, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the generating more acts of kindness is another way of doing that. Exactly.
Yeah. I remember a story as you were talking. There is this story of someone killed this mother's only son.
Mm,
And the gentleman came out of jail after, I don't know, 20 years or something. And the mother was kind to him. The mother went and visited him and says, well, he was a 16-year-old boy, and, being in a back crowd or something, she understood, she realized that she can't hate him because she can't bring her son back. And she was kind to him. And I can just imagine what that kindness and that forgiveness did to this young man for the rest of his life. Because if that hate was given towards him, then he might, to me, still go back and do it, because he would probably say to himself, I'm no good, nobody loves me. Do you know
right.
what I mean? But when someone says, I forgive you, I'm going to be kind to you, you killed my son, now you can be my son. And that's how she
Mm.
did it. She said,
That's
you know
wow.
what?
Yeah.
You can be my son.
Yeah.
We can have a relationship. And that is really so powerful. That's what we're talking about here,
Right.
because the mom forgive, understood, and was kind. Three
Yeah.
things wrapped up all in there.
Right. And if she didn't, she'd become bitter and
Yes,
resentful,
yes,
And it's like if we catch ourselves living like that, it's like this is not a good feeling. In terms of self-healing, what does that do to our nervous system, to our biology? It's got to take its toll on all of us. Look, we're
yeah,
all going to get illnesses and we're going to die one day and stuff. The question is,
yeah,
how am I heading down that road? Am I resentful for everything? I'm always puzzled, and I'm not there yet. But when you hear stories about people on their deathbed and all the regrets that they had, and I think, boy, I don't want to do that. My mother was filled with regrets. And I remember at an early age thinking, I'm not going to regret anything. And the only thing, well, there's a few, but the biggest thing that I regretted was my mother died when I was young. And the doctor told us she had cancer, and the doctor told us, don't talk to her about it. She doesn't want to talk about it. And then right after she died, I read the book by Kubler-Ross about death and dying and the stages and the denial and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I realized I should have spoken to her.
talking
How
about it.
was I listening to this doctor? What did he know?
Well, the
And then
doctors
it
don't
turns
know.
out,
They don't know a
what?
lot of stuff.
Yeah, I know. Well, me too. But years
Yeah.
later, years later, I found out that my brother had talked to my mother about her dying, and that kind of resolved it for me.
Mm,
So I don't regret it anymore. It was like,
yeah.
oh, I get some
Well, we're starting off
conclusion.
with a great conversation. I'm not even getting to my questions, but
Okay.
I need to say something about that too, because I was doing a meditation from Deepak Chopra the other day. And in the meditation, he said it was a heart healing meditation. And he said to um, do not, okay, I'm not exactly sure how he put it, but what he's saying, get rid of regret, get
Yeah.
rid of grievances, and choose
Right.
the miracle. And
Yeah.
at the time, I was sitting in a place where I was grieving, and I didn't have regret, but I was very hurt by something someone did to me. And he
Mm.
said, put that person face in front of you and get rid of that grievance. And you know, it
Yeah,
worked.
sure.
Came out of that with no grievance. I came out with that with my heart healed. I have now resolved the issue. It
Right,
was a family member or someone close to me. I've now resolved the issue because I chose a miracle. And
right.
that's basically what it is. It's the same
Yeah,
thing. We can interchange all those words. You know, if you choose kindness and get rid of the grievance, get rid of the regret, and choose the miracle, because it
right.
is a miracle that you can let go. It
That's
is a
right.
miracle to be happy. It
Right.
is a miracle to experience bliss, right?
Yeah.
And
And
those are the things that when you heal your heart and get rid of all that stuff that's in your heart, then you choose the miracle. And that's
right,
great. So yes, I'm a
right.
meditator.
That's great. And really, another word for what you're saying to me is gratitude. It's like
Yes,
I'm thankful that I'm still here,
yes,
that I got through those things. Those things were difficult, many challenges in my life, but those are the things that taught me how to be here more fully, to
yes,
go, oh, I can navigate the world a little more easily now.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, awesome. All right. Well, good introduction. So let's talk about how we can practice kindness in our daily life.
Okay.
So, I'm thinking, you tell me, what are some of the things that we can practice kindness in our daily life before
Well,
I,
I think that the first thing is we have to choose things that we can do over a long period of time, right? To say, I'm going to be kinder is too grand. I don't know where to begin with something like that. To say, okay, I'm just going to say hi to everybody I meet. No, well, yeah, you can do that if you want, but it's like, I think the things that we have to learn to be kind are everyday things that no one else knows about.
right?
Because kindness is like humility. You can't say, I'm humble. Someone else says you're humble,
Mhm.
right? Kindness is,
True,
I
true.
can say I'm kind, but that's a little bit of hubris. It's like someone else may say I'm kind, right? And
Mhm.
and to be able to find, so I wrote about this in the book because in every chapter I've got concrete exercises that we can do to practice these kind of things. So one was when I was 19, I moved out of my parents' house, and I decided at 19 that I didn't know how to do anything well. I was a failure at 19. I wasn't old enough to be a failure, but I was a failure already. And I
Mhm.
decided I don't know where this idea came from, but I decided I'm going to get good at one thing, and I chose brushing my teeth.
You're kidding me.
No,
Wow.
I'm serious. Because I thought I have to do it twice a day. It's a chance to practice it. No one knows if I didn't do it except the dentist who knew already, right? And so I would practice this and I got good at it, but was so interested. And this happened over months and months, which was all the strategies I used to sabotage myself in my life showed up in this single little event.
Wow.
And all the things that made me not feel good about myself, not like myself, were
Hmm.
all present in a toothbrush, for God's sakes. I mean, it's kind of
Wow.
bizarre. So I think the first step of being kind is practice, right? Something that we can do in a reasonable way. It can be turning the lights out in your house, folding your clothes at the end of the day, uh, any little chore around the house that's regular, not leaving dishes in the sink, right? It doesn't mean I don't fall off the wagon and leave them in the sink and do them, but I have some consciousness and awareness about it that can remind me I want to practice that. So that's the second thing, which is there needs to be a want. We have to want to do something to be kinder. We have to want to be kinder. It's not enough to, it's not enough to say, oh, I'd like to be kinder. That's not sufficient. I have to want to do it. And then we also have to realize that in the wanting of something, there's going to be some challenges to it. It's not always going to be easy or fun. Like you said, you meditate. Who wants to meditate every day? I've done it for years. It's like if I thought for a moment, do I want to meditate? I'd never sit on the cushion. I just go and sit, right? And that's it. Because if I think about it, I'd rather stay in my warm bed. Why get up? It's dark out. Who needs to do something like that? So we need to kind of push ourselves, but not by ignoring our feelings, but by being differentiated from them to realize that I can feel one way but act in another way. because the whole idea of being kinder or liking ourselves more, as I said before, it can feel inauthentic, right? And so we have to practice it until we feel this is starting to become me. So I started out by saying about brushing our teeth well, right? But there's many, many other things that we can do. We can talk about it in terms of generosity. We can talk about it in terms of listening. We can talk about it in terms of tough love, of being clear with someone. We can talk about it in terms of how do we interrupt our own internal dialogue to be a little happier, to not get stuck in ourselves like that. So there are a lot of ways, I think. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great. So I'm glad you ended with that because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, how is doing the dishes and and folding the clothes, being kind. But I mean, but I'm assuming that it's kind to yourself because if you don't do these things, maybe you live in chaos, and
Mhm.
living in chaos is not good. But you ended with some of the things you can do, like generosity and, and listening. All
Right,
those things are kind, serving, I would
right.
add, because that's a lot of
Yeah,
times when I'm kind, I serve people and give and, give them my attention, give them my love,
that's
and
right.
all those things are being kind. So
Yeah.
that's great.
I love what you said when you said, give them my attention.
Yeah.
Because, like, when you talked about the foster kids and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or just being kind to them, I mean, that's so fundamental to all of us. I mean, if a rabbit responds like that, imagine what can happen in us. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
deal. It's a big deal. And the word you use the word fundamental, which is that's one of my big interests, are things that are fundamental to us. Like the idea of liking ourselves more, to me, that's fundamental. I meet so many people who don't like themselves and they talk about loving themselves, but that's almost grand. It's too big. Let's start with liking yourself. Let's do something you can achieve in a reasonable way. And the same thing with kindness. It's like, let's start with small acts, not big things. It's like the random acts of kindness, which I interrupted you with at the beginning. I'm sorry about that. But random acts, I love random acts of kindness, right? And when I see them, I'm always touched and moved by them. But then my thought is, can we make them more intentional? Can we choose to do them instead of just by happenstance they occur once in a while? And that, when I started the book, for years I've been teaching this idea of liking ourselves more. And I did it through movement, moving in a way that you like the way it feels. And then one day I did some random act of kindness. And in that next moment, I realized I liked myself more. And I thought,
Hmm.
oh, it went from intrapersonal to interpersonal. And I'm not talking about just practicing acts of kindness to pat myself on the back, but to realize that this is a loop that perpetuates itself and grows exponentially in my life and the people around me too. And it's work. It is
Yeah.
work.
Great. Okay. Well, there's a couple of things I want to unpack. One of the ones first, before we get to the random acts of kindness, is do you think that you can be kind to others and not be kind to yourself?
Oh, terribly. As a matter of fact, I told you I got blocked for 5 years writing the part about being kind to myself. And
Hmm.
I find that many people who are so kind to others have such difficulty being kind to themselves. It's really a challenge for
Tell me
most
your
people.
journey. How did you unblock it? Why, where you didn't practice kindness to yourself all these years, which is why you couldn't write about it?
Yeah, well, in some way, I could say, yeah. I don't think I could name specifically how I wasn't kind to myself, but I don't think I understood the idea of being kind to myself. Why? I'll tell you why. It's really simple. Because I didn't like myself. I didn't think I deserved it.
Yeah,
Right.
that's you.
So, if someone bought me, sometimes I had friends once who on my birthday bought me a big gift. And no one remembers what these are anymore. It was a VCR, right? And it was a stereo, high definition VCR, and they chipped in and got it. And I didn't know how to take it,
You
right?
don't know how to receive. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. And so really, in the act of giving, we have to be able to receive. And I
Receive,
couldn't
right?
receive. You know what I used to do? I would steal things.
Steal things.
I was a little bit of a, no, I wasn't going to people's homes and
I
doing that,
understand you.
but
I
I
understand.
stole, like when I was in college,
Mhm,
I stole a leotard at the bookstore because I
mhm.
needed it for a dance class,
Right.
right? So I only stole things I needed and I got caught. And
Okay.
it was a real, and they put me on disciplinary probation. But what I realized was I wasn't able to ask for things or give myself things.
Mm,
And I had
I
to
get
really
you.
learn to take
Yes.
better care of myself. It's hard.
Yes. You're
Yeah.
touching some big things here because women, especially, don't know how to receive. And I used to be like that. I don't think I'm like that anymore, but I'll give you an example. My daughter doesn't know how to receive. You know, people are asking her to speak now and saying, okay, I'm going to give you this money to speak. And she's saying, I can't take it. I says, well, then you can never be a business person. You're going to be one of those coaches that coach and don't want to take the money because there's coaches like that because they don't know how to receive. I said,
Right.
you better learn to receive, right? Because she can't. I mean, she's going all the way to Pennsylvania, getting hotels, going to cars, and somebody offers to pay her, and she says, I can't take the money because she doesn't know how to receive. And there's a lot of women like that. They can
Yeah.
give, but then they don't know how to receive. So I understand. And then when you don't know how to receive, you also don't know how to ask. You know how many people
Right.
don't know how to ask. I
Yeah.
just finished doing a promotion for GoFundMe, and they're talking about people don't know how to ask for help.
Right.
They don't feel comfortable with it. They don't want to ask. And I'm like one of these people. I think that I'm still like that I wouldn't want to ask for help. But, yes, it's a fundamental thing for women, especially. I don't know about
Yeah.
men, but
I
probably
think,
even men more because a man always wants to be the provider. The man always wants to feel in control. So if the women are having problems asking, the men probably have more problems asking. But
yeah.
I'm not in the head of the man. But okay, yeah. So I wanted to understand that. And again, in the woman mindset, right? The reason I asked for that is that women would go and do everything for their
Yeah.
husbands and do everything for their children, and they go to work and they don't ever practice self-care. They don't
Right.
ever practice time for themselves. They're just
Right.
giving and giving and giving. And
Right.
that's why I said you can be kind to a whole bunch of people and not be kind for yourself. Don't want to ask. You're in the bathroom and kids are knocking on your door, mommy, 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 and you don't want, and you can't say, go away, mommy needs a moment.
But you know what you're talking about? It goes back to the thing you said earlier, which is courage. The
Yes,
courage to ask for something. Can
yes,
I can I read you a letter?
yes, sure, of course.
So when I wrote this book, my friend, my good friend, who did all the formatting and all the illustrations and stuff, he um he said to me one day, he said, "You don't have a forward for your book." And I said, "Yeah, I've been too busy. I don't know who to get." And he said, "What about the Dalai Lama?" And I went, What are you crazy? Dalai Lama? How do I have the, what are you talking about?" About 3 months later, I'm talking with someone about an experience with the Dalai Lama, and I thought, I can ask,
Okay.
right?
Wow. Yes.
It turns out his email, his phone number, his address, everything's online. So I wrote this letter to him. To His Holiness, this is to me is like, this took a lot of courage for me. To His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I write you with the utmost respect and admiration, with a request, if it's something you think would be of value in bringing more kindness to the world. I just published a book called Practice Intentional Acts of Kindness and Like Yourself More. Many ask me if it's about compassion and empathy, and I say, of course. I tell them it's also about concrete ways to generate more kindness towards others and ourselves, things we can do every day to create a kinder world. You're part of the final chapter, Kindness and Spirituality.
Mhm.
I've included a copy of this book along with this letter, back to my request, asking with as much courage and humility as I can muster, with the understanding that it's likely too unrealistic, too large a request,
Mhm.
realizing that before I even ask that it's not possible for you to fulfill, as you must receive many requests like this,
Mhm.
also knowing that it's only in the asking that there's a small chance you could fulfill it. My
Mhm.
book has no forward. Could you possibly write a forward for my book? I'm a little shocked at my own request. You do not know me. How do I have the nerve to ask such a thing from someone who represents so much to the world? Yet here I am humbly asking you for the benefit of others. Of course, reading the book is with the intention that it's for the benefit of others. But I'm not so naive to not acknowledge that would also be of benefit to me. So even if you gave me a few words that I could add as a foreword to this book, I would commit to giving half of all the profits from my book to any causes or charities that you think would most benefit from a financial contribution. I thank you in advance just for reading this letter. Any response at all would be a great gift for me. And if you're so inclined to write something for me, well, I have no words to express my thanks, other than if it helped even in a little way to bring more kindness to the world, it would bring me great joy and satisfaction. With deep appreciation and recognition for all you do to make our world a kinder, more peaceful place, sending you light, peace, and love. So I sent that and waited and didn't hear. I sent a hard copy. And then some months later, I sent a PDF with an email with the letter in it. Still haven't heard back yet. And then on another podcast, I read the letter, and the man said to me, so if you were going to donate the money to him, why don't you just donate it?
Mhm.
And I was like, what? And I was like busted all of a sudden. And so now half of the profits I make from my book, I donate every year, you know? And I feel like, but the reason I read it to you is the idea of we need to have the courage to take
Yes.
care of ourselves and ask for what we need. We need to
Mhm.
have the courage to let people know when this isn't working for my life, this kind of behavior or something like that. We need to be
Yeah.
able to communicate more clearly, which is another part of being kind to ourselves, to speak out,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. I 100% endorse that. Yes. Because a lot of times we're silent, our voices are silent, and we don't tell people, we don't set boundaries, and we don't, again, hey, we're bridging a lot of stuff here. And that's one of them, when I told you about the grievance that I had the other day, and it was exactly on that, where, someone wasn't treating me the way I wanted to be treated. And
Yeah.
I had the courage to tell them.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah.
But then I was still upset. And then I just let it go. I chose the miracle. All right. So that's awesome. Okay. Now, um, I had someone on my show earlier that talked about random acts of kindness. And one of the examples she gave was paying the toll for someone ahead of you,
Ah,
or maybe buying someone a coffee in a coffee shop
right.
or so.
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
is your random acts of kindness entail? Give us some examples.
Well, I gotta tell you a quick funny story. When I was a kid, we had a country house that's upstate New York, and my father and his friend would usually be driving behind, and my father would pay for the toll for his friend behind. And the guy
Okay.
would go, oh, he's paid for it. And he did like on three tolls, but on the fourth toll, he didn't pay. And the
And
guy
the
just
guy just
drove right through. And he said the police cars came after him and stuff. So what are my random acts of
went
kindness? Well, the other day I was in the this was a random act of kindness. And like I said, I'm interested in the intentional ones a lot. But I was in the supermarket and there was this, I was going to say an old guy, but he's probably my age. This old guy in front of me, and he had all this food, and his friend was with him, and he went to pay with this special, I guess it was a food stamp card or something, and they hadn't put the money in yet. And it
Mm,
was like the 1st of September. And he was like,
mm,
damn, he was so frustrated. And he walked out of the store upset. And I just said it was like $29 or so. I said, I'll
yeah,
pay
that's
for it.
not a lot. Yeah, yeah,
And she said, you sure? I said, yeah. I mean, it's
yeah.
not going to
That
break
is
me or anything
good.
like that. And when I went out, his friend said, this guy bought their stuff. And he said, so there are some good people left in the
That's the
world, you
world.
know?
Yes,
And the
that's
thing
so
is,
beautiful.
we have to
I
look
even
for
feel good, and I didn't even do it.
we have to look for those moments, and they're
Yes.
not that common. I'll tell you, I saw a random act of kindness on a plane that I thought about, and then I thought I wouldn't do that. And
Oh.
it was a plane where they no longer took cash, and this guy was trying to buy several bottles of wine for him and his wife, little bottles,
Mhm.
and he said, well, we sorry, we can't take it. And then the guy in front of me says, I'll buy it for him. And I thought, well, that was great. But then I thought, do I want to contribute to someone's drinking? And I thought, nah, I'm
It's
not
just
going
a
to buy
little
someone
bottle.
alcohol. I know it's a little bottle, but that can, it's a long
I follow
flight. I
you.
mean, who knows how many they're
Yes.
going to have. And so there's certain things that I feel like I'm really willing to contribute towards, and other things that I thought, I don't think that's supportive of a higher standard of living for someone like
Right.
that, you
Yes,
know?
yes. That's funny. My husband is a cigar smoker, not any longer because he got walking pneumonia and he doesn't really do it anymore. But there was a time he was a cigar smoker, and I asked my daughter to buy him cigars for his for his Christmas. She says, absolutely not. Patrick,
Good for
it's
her.
cancer.
Yeah, smart kid.
So
Here,
I understand what you're saying, right?
here's another way.
It's one of the reasons people don't give people on the street money because they're
That's right.
assuming that they're going to buy liquor. But
Yeah,
I never pass someone on the street without giving them money. It's against my values because to me it shows that you've got something to give because giving is
right.
all about you have
Giving.
something to give and they don't. And it's
Right.
it's 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 how the universe works. So I don't care what they do with it. I give it. But a lot of people would say, oh, they're just going to buy liquor. All right. But
I have a friend who puts together these little packets, and it's got like a space blanket and socks and water and all this stuff for the homeless people. And they're not cheap. They're like $8 to $10. And I buy
wow.
them from her, and she doesn't make any money in it, right? It's just that's the cost of the materials in it. And I'm always giving it to homeless people. And they're
Yeah.
so touched because, okay, if you're worried about them using it for drugs or drink or something like that, that goes right around it. But here's another, I would say, random act that I do whenever I can, which is if I get some kind of promotion, let's say for something that they're asking me for a donation, and I think, oh, yeah, I could give $20. And then I sit with it for a moment and I usually give 50 because I
Really?
can,
You double it?
right? But that can
Nice.
be, and I don't want to make that sound like a lot of money. It's like if I can give $1, maybe I can give $2 because that makes a difference to people.
Yes, yes,
So I
yes.
think that's another way of acting
Yeah, I
randomly
practice
and
generosity
intentionally at
too.
the same time.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I practice generosity. In fact, once I started, every time I go to the mailbox now, all that's in there is
yeah,
charities.
right. I know. Yeah,
And regular mail because the word got
yeah.
out.
That's the downside. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So we're doing great here. So, how do we develop the skill of kindness?
There's only one way with practice, but you need something concrete to practice, whether it's a practice of learning how to listen better or the practice of being generous and understanding what does it
Right.
mean to be generous? Because that's a mistake that gets often when someone says kindness is equated with generosity. He's so kind, he's so generous. Even in the dictionary, it talks about it like
It goes
that.
together,
But they're
right?
not the same thing. I can be generous, like you said, with your attention or with my time or with the things that I have, or um, but practice is the only way I know to do it. And that means falling off of the horse, not succeeding, saying I made a mistake. Like tough love, talking to someone and making a mess out of it. Because the only way you get good at talking to someone like that is by making a lot of mistakes. So
Right.
I'm a big proponent of practice, and that's
Yeah, I love your toothbrush analogy. I'm thinking, wow, that's getting down to the basics.
yeah, it's the basics.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes.
it is.
All right. So tell us about your Feldenkrais method.
Yes,
How does that equate to what we've been talking about here?
good. Yeah. So Feldenkrais method is a movement technique based on learning theories, and we work with people with orthopedic and neurological problems, people with self-image issues, professional athletes, dancers, and movement's kind of the medium into the person, right? So Feldenkrais, he had an idea that our self-image was comprised of our thinking, our feeling in an emotional sense, our sensing, and our actions, our movement in life. And a change in any one of those potentiates the change in other aspects of the self. But movement is the most immediate and concrete. And where this started out for me, because There's private work where I have hands-on with people, fully clothed on a table. And then there are classes that are very small movements that are done with a lot of attention. And I was putting together a workshop around self-image, and I started to think that our self-image was a reflection of how much we like ourselves or don't like ourselves. And after a while, I thought, this is my job to help people like themselves more. And I have a very unusual, novel, and unique way of exploring it because they're just doing simple movements on the floor that are functional, but they don't have any contextual relationship at the moment. And I say, are you moving in a way that you like the way it feels? And if you're not, if you are, that's great. If not, that's significant. Let's pay attention to that. And the funny thing about doing that is kind of like the back door into ourselves. That if we practice that, moving in a way that we like the way it feels more and more, it's really how we were as children. Children, everything they do, they like the way it feels. And if they don't, they let you know it right away, right? Now, they also learn to ignore themselves, right? And so this idea of liking ourselves more and moving in a way that we like the way it feels, for me, came out of my practice in the Feldenkrais method. And most of my work now is I train people to become practitioners. I had one program in Australia, it's 4 years long. And at the end, when they graduated, I'd call them up, give them a certificate, hug them. And so many people whispered in my ear, I like myself more now. And I thought, well, that makes it all worthwhile. So that's been the first vehicle that led me to these ideas. And then, as I spoke about before, that I found that in acts of kindness, I like myself more. So these things are looping around and feeding on each other in a really productive way, I would say. Okay.
Okay.
And yeah.
So that's great. Yeah, I would never have thought that. And you're right. We didn't actually touch on any of that in our conversation on kindness. So that's good. So your book is called Practice Random Acts of Kindness.
No, wait,
No?
practice intentional acts of kindness.
Ah, okay. Practice intentional acts of kindness. Right. All right. So why did you write it? And what do you want people to walk away with after reading?
What I would like is to see if we could all generate more kindness in the world. I
Okay.
think that's, like I said, a fundamental human need. And if I can contribute to that, even in the tiniest way, I feel like my mission was fulfilled. So I feel like that's a bit of my mission. Okay. And in terms of how I got into it, well, I told you part of the story I just told you just now, but there was another personal part of the story that kind of compelled me to write it, and it was about my dad. And my dad and I, we got along, but we're never really close, you know. And at the end of his life, first he ran out of money, and my brother and I had to support him, and then he got dementia. And when he got dementia, I had a stepmother, and we finally had to put him into a home. And the thing was, the home was in Florida. And it was coming into the summer where she was going to go back to New York. All his friends were going back to New York. No one was going to visit him. And I thought, oh man, this guy's just going to diminish, you know? So I decided to call him every day. I don't know
Oh,
where I got the idea, just 5 minutes, right? And
yeah.
he knew who I was. He would talk gibberish half the time, or had the phone upside down, or he'd put it down. But every day I made it a practice to call him.
That's
Excuse me.
beautiful.
And I did that for about 3 years.
Mm,
And that was a lot of work. I mean, it became a habit soon enough, but still, I didn't always feel like calling him, but I did it. Right.
wow.
And so
That's kindness.
that act
Yes.
changed my relationship to kindness. And I call it 5 minutes a day. Right. But then
Mhm.
you think 5 minutes a day is it's not easy. I used to try to practice with my dog 5 minutes and 3 minutes. And I don't check my email, do this. And he'd just follow me around. He didn't care. You know, he didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But to do that, and it doesn't mean that I have to stay on the phone 5 minutes with someone. I could be thinking about someone. I can do it for 1 minute. I can just talk to a friend about my friend to give them attention, like you said before. I think
Mhm.
those are all part of the 5 minutes a day that we can do like that. So that really pushed me, that
Cement.
and the idea of
Yeah,
liking ourselves more.
yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good. People that are listening right now, I'm pretty sure that's inspiring some people. Because
I
like
hope
you
so.
said earlier, a lot of times you would say to yourself, I'm never going to be kind to that person. And
Yeah.
usually it's something, someone like your parents or a caregiver or someone that abused you or something along the way. And then if you can say, well, you know what, I'm going to be kind anyway. And
Yeah.
it takes some work and it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And the beautiful part about it is that your dad had dementia. So
Yeah.
he probably wasn't even aware who was on the other line, but you knew
No, he knew it was me.
it was you. Okay.
He
So he
didn't
wasn't
know
that
it was
far
me.
gone then.
Well, I mean, he couldn't talk very often, or he would be confused about things and say strange things. I mean, he did all kinds of funny stuff too,
Mhm.
but he knew who I was, and I was always grateful for
That's good.
that, you
That's
know?
good. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, well, that's kindness. And if he knew where he was, then you're actually helping him in his journey to the afterlife, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yes, he knows that his son loved him in order to do
One,
that.
one- Once I
Love
was
is
visiting
important.
him in
What was that?
Florida, once I was visiting him, and I'd go for like a week. I lived in California back then,
Mhm.
and he used to smoke, and he had emphysema, but he wanted a cigarette. And I thought, oh, what the hell? I'm gonna get him a cigarette. And I don't smoke. I said, which ones do you want? He goes, the yellow ones. Okay. So I pick a yellow box. He doesn't know what it is. And we're sitting in this rental car. We're not supposed to smoke in it. And I give him a cigarette, and I thought, what the hell? So I take one too. And I'm like trying not to choke on it.
It's
And
beautiful.
he looks at me and he goes, I guess you're the dad now. So he'd come out with things like that. Or like when he would talk gibberish on the phone,
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
go, oh, that's terrible. And he'd go, what are you talking about? Yeah, he knew what he was talking about. So he had some cognizance in him still.
Yes.
So
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's all about the memories. It's all about the experience. It's all about making someone's life better.
yeah,
If we were to put it in a bumper sticker or put it in a bottle, that's what kindness is.
yeah,
Making you feel better, making someone else feel better, making
yeah,
someone's quality of life better,
right,
whatever. You know what I mean? Because
right.
there's something that it's a quote, but it's very, very true. And I remember it all the time. People
Hmm.
don't remember what you say, but they remember how you make them feel. The feelings
Oh,
are permanent. The feelings of your father felt
that's right.
so good looking a cigarette with his son. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's an action. It's a concrete thing. It's
Yes,
not saying I love you. You can say I love you. That's great. But
right.
how do you express the love? How do you
Yes, that's what I'm
demonstrate it?
saying.
Yeah.
I'm feeling exactly what you're talking about. Like I'm an empath. I can get in, I can feel it. The energy is being transferred. So that's amazing. All right, so we're almost at the end of our time. So tell our listeners how they can pick up a copy of your book. Say the correct name of the book.
Okay.
And if you have a website that they can go
I
to,
do.
and if you have a social media handle. So
Uh,
this is where you,
sure
you
thing.
tell it.
So the book is called Practice Intentional Acts of Kindness and Like Yourself More. And the website is called practicing-kindness.com. And there's a lot of information, and all my social media stuff is on there too, and ways to contact me. There's a sample worksheet there, and it's all available on Amazon as a paperback. I like to say as a Kindle instead of a Kindle, and also as an audiobook that I read.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's widely available. Yeah,
Okay. Beautiful. All right, Alan. This has been a very pleasant conversation. I loved it. I like her tonality. I like the topics that we covered. And I think that we have just broadcasted to the universe
great.
what kindness should look like, why we should do it.
Yeah,
And the people that are listening are going to be kinder,
hopefully.
even if it's
Yeah,
just a short time. But
right.
they say a brain that's expanded with knowledge can never return. So I
Right.
think that, our conversation today is going to have an impact on our listeners. So thank
Well,
you very much for being on the show. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. Today we're talking about kindness, whether it's intentional acts of kindness, whether it's random acts of kindness, whether it's being kind to yourself, being kind to others. And we set the table for all ways that you can be kind to yourself. So go pick up a copy of Alan's book if you want to dive deeper, and head over to his website, and so that you can explore that, because we talked about rats that were giving poisonous stuff, and they didn't receive it because they were being petted, and it was given to them in love. So that image can be transferred to anybody that you love, anybody that you know. And
yeah.
Alan ended up by talking about his dad. So that's a beautiful thing to do. So if you head over to the show page, which is myhelps.us, you will see links to Alan's book and links to his website, and also a transcript of our conversation. And so definitely go pick up a copy of his book. So, Alan, any last words before we wrap up?
Well, I just want to thank you so much for the conversation. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope your listeners enjoy it too. And you seem like a really kind person to me. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Well, hey, I'm supposed to be Christ-like, right? So kindness is what I do.
That's good. You're doing it. You're doing it.
All right. Well, listen, guys, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.